In a new age world filled with delusions and wish fulfillment by morons in need of attention, renowned experiencers of high strangeness and podcasters Jeffrey Ritzman and Jeremy Vaeni received invitations to a tropical paradise getaway called Paratopia. Little did they know, it was the same type of new age spiritual retreat they've been avoiding all their lives.
Don't be shy. Learn humility from your function. Butter is a viable option. Come on, you can shake it. Yeah. Take off your shirt and stay a while. Anything goes in Paratopia. And welcome. This just in from the Paratopia news desk. Vacationers Jeffrey Ritzman and Jeremy Vaeni have agreed to do the Paratopian podcast indefinitely. That's more words than music. And it's highly awkward. Back to you. News desk. Hey, Jeff, what are you doing? Come on, man.
What? Leave me alone. I can't play. We're not doing anything. Shut up.
No, you're the one. What are you talking about? Shut up. You're the one who wanted to do a podcast, and now you're just screwing around with all these sound effects. It's like,
have you heard this one?
Yeah, like 1,000 times.
Oh, okay.
You're annoying the hell out of me. It's loud.
How about now?
Is this your candy shop little kid?
It is. It's fun. Yes, it's cool.
Yes. Soon you'll be the Rob Simone of podcasts.
That's right. I'm the Rob Simone of the internet. Yeah.
So who do we have as a first guest here on our little shoe?
That would be Mr. Ted Roe of NARCAP.
Ted Roe. Ted Roe, spelled R-O-E, which is, it's not irony exactly. It's, what do you call that when something is named after what it is, you know?
You going on too long.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is he swims with the fishes.
Right.
His last name is a fish.
That's right. Well, fish eggs, right?
Roe? I don't know. I'm not that smart.
Okay. Never mind.
I'm going to take your word for that.
All right.
I'm only smart enough to almost figure out what I was trying to say and then be slightly wrong about it.
Okay.
That's where my intelligence ends.
Let's go with that.
All right, so let's get him on the horn.
Hey, Ted.
Thanks for doing that really quick like that.
Go ahead.
We are here with Ted Roe. He is, are you the director of NARCAP, Ted?
Executive Director.
Executive Director. And what does NARCAP stand for?
National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena.
Okay, and essentially what you've done is you've decided UFOs represent something real, so what we're going to do is we're not ever going to say the word UFO. We're going to say UAP, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, and we're not going to associate with the UFO community if at all possible, and when we do, we are going to change them to do things that look, I don't know, scientific and rational, perhaps? Is that right? Is that based?
Yeah, credibility matters, you know. You don't call it a UFO unless it's a UFO. I mean, if it's an unusual light, then it really isn't a UFO, is it? So unidentified aerial phenomena is a little bit easier. It doesn't come with a lot of baggage. Nobody's thinking necessarily alien spaceship when they hear the term UAP. So that's what we're looking for, some objectivity in the conversation that allows for the possibility that there's more than one source of unidentified aerial phenomena.
And so here's where irony descends upon us like a fine rain.
Oh, it does.
Somebody somebody sent me, or somehow I found, I don't remember, this Penn and Teller episode of a show on Showtime called Bullshit. And the episode was dealing with really these people with dolphin fetishes. It's like people who were teaching dolphin birthing classes, but they'd never done that before, and they were talking about the wonders and miracle of it, and yet they'd never done it before, so they didn't really know what would happen if dolphins helped human women give birth. And then they would cut to these people in Sedona, who did these like prayer and dance circles to the dolphins and things like this, and ha ha ha. Now, I had spent some time last summer with Ted. It's been about a week or maybe a little less in Hawaii, and I mean, Ted, I don't know if I said this the last time I spoke with you, but your knowledge of the flora and fauna of the Big Island is astounding. I mean, it's almost as breathtaking as the landscape, because you know every little plant, every little animal, every little insect that there is to know, and I have no clue how you retain that when I can't remember what I did yesterday. So I spent time with Ted. I knew that he swam with dolphins, he free dives, and so sometimes he ends up with dolphins and goes out there and swims with them and all that. And so I emailed him the link to this YouTube video of Bullshit, and I said, Ted, do you know these assholes? And I think that's what I said in the email. Do you know these assholes? To which he says, not only do I know them, but go ahead, Ted, finish that sentence.
I'm living with them.
I'm living with them.
Yeah. I had a little taste of the pod project,
Yeah, how does a rational guy end up doing that?
Well, it's interesting. It's really just, at the time I was going to be leaving the island for about a month and a half. And, but as it turned out, I pushed my exit date back a little bit further and ended up I needed a place to stay. So I found a place to stay with Star and Michael and that crowd involved with this dolphin birthing thing that you were referring to. And there is a sort of a tradition around dolphin birthing, but as far as I know, no humans have been birthed with dolphins since the mid-30s. I learned a little bit about it while I was around these folks, and learned a little bit about water birthing, which is interesting. But at the same time, as you say, it's woo-woo. You're on the edges of things that are not terribly discerning in a way that you can engage rationally. And it was very uncomfortable. I was definitely ready to leave when the opportunity came. Man.
Yeah, well, I imagine that was... So, did that influence you at all in terms of how you see woo-woo people? Or, I mean, do you give them a little more leeway? Or?
Well, I think we ought to define terms a little bit. I mean, woo-woo, I run an organization that's pretty focused on factual, evidentiary information of high value, scientifically acceptable information. And so I sort of occupy the right-wing conservative branch of the unidentified aerial phenomena investigation movement. And other people are a little bit further to the left in a lot of ways, and they operate from belief systems or perspectives that aren't really consistent with that rational side of things. So I often find myself at odds with that kind of thinking. It's hard to have a solid conversation about things when it's channeled information, or it's it just to me I'm just not there. Other people operate in other spectrums, and I don't know how successful they are at doing it. I know when you were when you came over to Hawaii the last time here, that we got a little taste of sort of probing the mindsets of these true believers, and that's, I think, probably the common trait is belief. They believe certain things, and in the work I do, it's about purging belief, getting rid of what you believe and figuring out what's actually a fact. And when you run out of facts, you stand there and you look over the edge and stare into the blackness, let the wind blow, and wait for another fact to come along, and you don't confabulate, you don't extrapolate inappropriately. You try not to speculate too much, unless it's in a way that's productive to the research.
Well, what do you think drives that mindset? I mean, do you think that there's some underlying thing that they're repressing? I mean, what having hung out with them, what do you think? What's going on in there?
Well, I think it's pretty clear to me that everybody's damaged goods. And some folks have trauma, and they've dissociated in different ways, and that's how they're coping with things that have happened to them in their lives. Other folks just never really developed a critical mind, in the sense that they don't. For them, logic only works so far, and then when logic doesn't work anymore, they can fill in the blanks in other ways. So, I can't really pretend to understand these people too much. I get a feeling that there's an essential attempt at trying to do good in the world, but I find myself at odds with the approach. Belief really just kind of gets in the way of discernment. You need facts. You need to understand what's really happening if you want to initiate change, in my opinion.
Did anything you say have an effect on them? I mean, are these the same people that I met when I was there, Starr and Michael?
No.
Okay.
No.
So probably they weren't talking to you about David Icke.
No, I don't think you met them when you were there up here. But Michael's got a lot of experience. He's a neurophysiologist and has worked a lot with dolphins and probably understands dolphin physiology better than a lot of folks. And they really are wonderful creatures. They really, really are. And we don't really appreciate just how powerful they are and how intelligent they are and how interactive they are. Mm-hmm. I had to learn that. I found out that a number of my freediving experiences involving dolphins were unique, even for people who swim with dolphins a lot. So there is an aspect of interaction with these, beings, I suppose is a fair word. They're very, very bright, and they're empathetic. I've had a number of examples of them showing care and concern for me as a swimmer, particularly when I'm swimming deeply. So there is reasonable ground to have some respect for dolphins. I mean, the oracle at Delphi in Greece is a dolphin oracle. Okay, Delphi is dolphin. So humans have sort of recognized a relationship with dolphins throughout, and it certainly had a mystical side to it. My experience is that they're wonderful animals. They live dangerous and difficult lives. They're terribly interactive at certain times, and if you have the luck of being able to free dive in a group of dolphins, you're doing something very sublime. Does that mean dolphins are teleporting? Does that mean that other things are happening that are quite metaphysical? I don't know. I couldn't speak to that.
Okay, well, then let's bring her on back to UAPs.
Sure.
You've actually, personally, I guess, probably not as part of NARCAP, although you'll correct me if I'm wrong, have ended up helping out MUFON to do conferences, and I guess to do what else? To sort of revamp their rules so that they're more scientific in their approach?
Well, I think that's their goal. And they look to NARCAP probably along with other efforts as a model, and in that sense, we've been available to. I laud that approach. I think that's the right thing to do, and they are an influential organization. So, to the extent we can, we've offered whatever assistance that would be helpful. And we did speak at their conference, their international conference this summer. I had a number of NARCAP folks there presenting various aspects of our work.
So when you're investigating a UAP case, do you rule anything out? I mean, I don't even know how many cases you've worked on, but I'm assuming you've come into contact with high strangeness type cases.
Sure.
Would you rule those out? Would you examine those? How would you go about scientifically justifying high strangeness?
Well, here's the deal, really. There's been a debate out there about the quality of pilots as witnesses, whether they're particularly a better type of witness than others. And our approach has been to accept the fact that when these cases occur in the flying environment, you can bring specific tools to bear. We know a lot about the flying environment. We've spent billions of dollars understanding human perception, perceptual psychology, human factors issues in the flying environment. So we have a lot of tools to bring to bear if a pilot comes to us and says something unusual happened, and even more tools to bear if there seem to be corresponding effects on equipment, if there was radar detections, if there were secondary witnesses in other aircraft, this sort of thing. So we can bring these tools to bear in every single case, and pilots are susceptible to delusion and illusion and misidentification of things, just like everybody else. And there are phenomena that are unusual, poorly documented, that could account for some of these observations and incidents that may have a natural source. And then there's a category of phenomena that fits the high strangeness aspect of things that seems to, for lack of a better word, it seems to be whatever it is.
Are there any other aspects of the field that interest you outside of UAPs? I mean, do abductions do anything for you, or crop circles, anything like that?
You know, I've had to be so careful working with our image because we work with the aviation community and we've done some work with government. That I've really sort of stayed away from the more, humanistic sides of this debate. Really, our work is to document a certain kind of case, and it involves aviation safety and unidentified aerial phenomena. And when we have about 3,400 cases of incidents and observations involving military and commercial aircraft mostly. And out of that, there are threads of commonalities along several different tracks. So we try not to second guess our reporters. We just try to document and protect their identity, address the bias in the aviation system against discussing the phenomena, and then encourage dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever go out to? Do you ever go on site to any sort of, like, I don't know, what they were, UFO flap type areas or anything like that?
Well, sure. There's a site in southwestern U.S. that I've been to a number of times, where unidentified aerial phenomena in the form of anomalous light phenomena manifest regularly. Very unusual. Had some pretty good looks at it. Still not sure what I'm looking at, but it's very interesting. So,
what were you looking at?
I've been to some places. Excuse me?
Can you describe what it is that you were looking at?
Well, in one case, this is a desert area, so it's quite arid, and yet no fires seem to occur when these phenomena happen, but they seem to be round, burnt orange-colored balls of light, red balls of light, green balls of light, unusual other light phenomena. Not really sure what we're looking at there, but very interesting.
Do they happen at certain times of the day or certain times of the year?
Well, they're more visible at night, and it's a lot more comfortable to be out there in the cold season than the hot season. It gets up to 125 degrees out there during the summers and hotter, and it's not safe to be out there. But at night, the observations are much easier in the late afternoon and evening, nighttime.
Jeff, does this sound familiar to you?
Yes. Ted, are you familiar with the Marley Woods case at all?
You might have to refresh me on that.
It's one that Ted Phillips is investigating, ongoing as far as I know. It has a lot of similar aspects of what you just described, but they also have quite a bit of weird stuff that is akin to maybe like the Skinwalker Ranch type of scenario, where we have weird-ass animals running around and large balls of light appear to be showing up out of nowhere, and in some of those balls of light, people are saying that they're almost seeing what looks like another world through this light. Just some really bizarre things that don't necessarily, seem UFO related, but kind of are in a way.
Well, in our sense, the site I've been looking at, I'm not the only person that's aware it's out there. There are a number of researchers going from sort of different angles looking at this, and there seems to be a lot of anomalous light phenomena for some periphery around the site itself, amorphous orange blobs discharging, this sort of thing, fairly constantly. And some of the phenomena, while much of it is regular, and there seems to be duration with it in that it repeats, like there's a row of red lights that light up on the edge of the canyon there, and they do it at certain times of the night, and then they'll go out and they'll come on, and you look at them, and literally you blink, and when you open your eyes, they won't be there, and then when you open your eyes again, they're there, and everybody sees them. It's not something that's localized to one person or anything, but there's a lot of Native American rock art in the area. It's very arid, so if these phenomena were hot, it would start fires, and that's not what they're doing. So,
has anyone tried to run up on them when they're in that spot, or are they several miles away that we're talking about?
Oh well, no, they come right into the campsite. You can sometimes get closer than you want to be to them. As far as anybody touching them, nobody's had the urge to do that. No, I was out there with Erling Strand from Hesteland, Norway. Your listeners might be familiar with the Hesteland site. Very similar types of phenomena, but much more of them occurring at the southwestern U.S. site.
How much of this stuff's getting visually documented?
A bit of it. The whole point isn't just to take pictures. What we really need to do is get better data. And to that end, the Italian astrophysicist Massimo Teodorani, I think he's been part of the EMBLA project looking at what's happening in Hesteland, developed a technique to collect spectra data off of mobile, unpredictable luminosity. So we come up with a way to break down the light coming off of these things so we can kind of determine a little easier just what the constituents are of these phenomena. He did put a paper out on the internet. It came out in 2003, I think. I can't remember the title of the darn thing, but it's under Teodorani anyway, Massimo Teodorani.
Okay. Well, I mean, it seems like there's getting to be more of these little hot spots like around like that are duplicatable almost on a nightly basis. Seems to be getting, I don't know, I'm almost getting familiar to hearing them now all of a sudden that, with Skinwalker and these other places.
It's interesting because, there seem to be a number of these sites around the world, and you can actually kind of draw a band across the southern U.S. pretty much from Gulf Breeze and that area right across Texas and the southern southwestern states, and hit a number of places where these things are reported to be seen regularly. What I found was interesting was that this site in particular, very well known by the locals, but not very well known outside of it. I mean, University of Arizona has an atmospheric physics department that is top of the line, and they're only 90 miles away, and they don't know about this. And I've watched F-16s flying through the space where these amorphous orange blobs were lighting up, and so they must know they're there. Haven't had the chance to really find out what they're thinking.
I guess when I was asking you about someone trying to get closer to some of the lights, is that on a recent Paracast show, I think Ted Phillips had mentioned that in one instance they had a large globe of light on a hill, and Ted and the gentleman who I think owns the property kind of got on some four-wheelers or a truck, and they went up around where this thing should be by rights to where the direction that they were looking, and they saw nothing. But yet the person back at the site visually seeing this globe of light said, I saw your headlights right near it. There's no way you couldn't have seen it, which almost pointed to something directional. I mean, do you have that kind of thing going on there at all?
Well, we've been baffled a few different ways in that we've had some unusual equipment reactions. For example, just we were carrying lightning strike indicators out there similar to what golfers wear, and we'd have these things tripping pretty regularly, and along with it you would get other types of detections. So it's kind of baffling. The makeup of the ground out there is different. There's the radiation count's a little bit high. It's just kind of strange. And as far as directional stuff goes, not quite like that. But I've had other things. We've seen other things out there that are just strange. We were around high noon. We were looking down the ravine and saw what looked like a rectangular sheet of lightning, for lack of a better word, coming up the ravine.
Huh.
And as we watched it, there seemed to be a discharge between it and the ground, and then it went a little bit further, sort of into the center of where the site is, and then it just blinked out. We went back and looked at it 30 frames per second, and what it was it looked like a line of lightning vibrating at a rate that would make it appear to be a rectangle, and there was a distinct discharge between it and the ground. And then the thing again moved into the center of the site as we were surveying it, and then went out. I had Dr. Haynes look that over. He's a perceptual psychologist, an expert in visual acuity, and we took a look at the lay of the land and the ability for reflections to bend and other things, and we're just not able to explain it other than it was anomalous and consistent with what other people were seeing, but right. Weird. You know.
Well, you say these things get a little closer than you want. How close are we talking about?
Well, we at higher frames, when we're looking at them in less than a second, sometimes they'll move right through the group. But we've had them. For example, when we were walking back from observing them along the rim and watching along the rim of the canyon. There were 5 red ones lighting up and then going out, and we were probably 30 feet from them.
Wow.
And just kind of a cherry sort of stoplight red, and fixed, almost like they were attached to something that was just a little bit out of phase from reality. I don't know, but then those are seen pretty much in the same place with the same angle over and over again. So. I really don't know what it is we're looking at out there, but it's unusual and it deserves some more attention.
How about physical effects when they're that close? Anything physical with people reporting anything when they get that close?
Your mind kind of messes with you when you're standing around staring into the desert looking for weird lights. You have to do a little mental hygiene out there to just kind of make sure everything's okay. And
sure.
And we talk to each other and had radios and the ability to triangulate. So if one person was looking at something, we'd call to somebody and make sure somebody else was seeing it, so we'd have an extra set of eyes. But in that sense, a couple of the party came back with some sort of spooky stories. Lester Velez was out there with me from MUFON. I don't know if you know him or not. He also works at Opus, dealing with psychologists studying UAP experiencers. So in that sense, I don't come away with that sort of thing. I just have a very inquiring mind, and I want to know. I want to get close to it. Try to get an understanding of what it is I'm looking at. And I'm not satisfied that I know at this point.
Wow.
I don't think that just labeling it Earth lights and ignoring it is really the right call. It's a catch-all phrase, and it really doesn't tell us anything. These things have unusual properties, and the more time you spend watching them, the more you realize just how unusual they are.
Sounds fascinating to me.
So when you see something like that, knowing what your goal is with NARCAP, do you feel like maybe the sort of rational box that you're trying to put it into is too constrictive?
Haven't arrived there yet. I think that if you're looking at something that exists in our reality that other people can see, that isn't a personal experience, it's an external experience involving 2 or more minds and perhaps some equipment. I think that physics and mathematics and science can get to the bottom of it. It may not get there right away, and it may teach us some things we did not anticipate we would know. But if it's a physical object, it has physical properties. So that's my approach to it.
And who do you ultimately who ends up with these reports? Is it politicians or?
Well, actually, we funnel them deep back into black, dark places where bats and Karl Rove live.
Oh, nice. Good.
Yeah.
Cheney's bunker.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. We try to be very transparent. We put all of our completed work, when we have completed casework, we try to get it up on our website. There, with some exceptions, in that if some cases were clearly, we got partway down the road and realized that there was just no there, that it was had a prosaic explanation, and we were satisfied with that, and we didn't go any further, then we may not even bother writing a paper on it. It depends on if there's a lessons learned of some kind.
Now, the goal, though, is to have congressional hearings, right? Something along those lines.
Well, what we're trying to do is just document the fact, as we understand it, that unidentified aerial phenomena represent a threat to aviation safety, and that they need to be looked at much more closely in that perspective. And we have the Deputy Director of Human Factors for NASA is on our staff. Dr. Haynes is former Chief of the Space and Human Factors Office at Ames Research Center. And Brian was originally, I guess, when I met him, he was working with the Aviation Safety Program Office there at Ames. So these are people who, feel that as an adjunct to their professional work that this deserves a closer look. And they've gone about it in a very careful and rational way, and it's my job to make sure that we stay careful and rational, and that we protect the credibility of these people who are doing what everybody would like them to do, which is take a serious look at this situation.
So is it a matter of compiling the best, most solid cases you can get to bring to Congress? Or, how many cases does it take before you go, okay, we're going to do a big campaign to get this out there?
Our role right now is activism towards the U.S. aviation community. We've done some work. General Accounting Office had some of us working for, I think it was Department of Homeland Security, examining uncorrelated penetrations into U.S. air defense zones. And that was a bit interesting for what little bit the guys on my staff with the clearances could tell me. It was interesting. So in that sense, yeah, we've been involved with some things there. We're mainly bringing our credibility and experience of our staff to bear. Jacques Lee is on our executive advisory committee. We have other people as well who are experienced in dealing with this topic inside of government. So in the end, really what we do is we serve an activist role for the aviation community right now. That is our prime focus, is assisting the aviation community and coming to grips with this aspect of their experience, which they haven't yet.
Has there been any case that has stood out to you more than others as being like, okay, this has got to be blank, alien, something,
Well, there's a number of them. We have 3,400 of these cases. I'm reminded of a case from 1926 where a pilot claimed that he'd been accosted by a number of flying manhole covers in 1926. And then you see sort of an escalation, a bell curve of reports as we get more aircraft into the air, a bell curve of more aviation-related reports. And then eventually we field a global Air Force with centralized reporting, and then you just see this dearth of reports coming back from all around the world. The number of reports in the early mid-40s, you can just see it rising and rising, and then it climbs even more as we consolidate our global presence and accumulate more data and put more aircraft in the air that have more experiences with unusual aerial phenomena of a variety of kinds. So we know what's going on out there, and it's been documented all along. Our job is to continue documenting it in the best way possible. Some of the best cases might involve the Tehran, Iran case of 1976, September of 1976. That involved electromagnetic effects on a number of aviation systems on the aircraft and weapon systems as well. There are other cases. The recent case in England involving, I think it was Aer Lingus. There was a sighting of very large unidentified aerial phenomena over England that was apparently detected by French radars, and it was estimated to be a mile across, quite big. seen by two different aircraft on two different air corridors from different angles, and detected by British UK radars as well. That's a fairly important case. I think the O'Hare case of Chicago, 2006, November 6, 2006, also an important case, involved a UAP showing up over the sea terminal at O'Hare International and staying there for about 25 minutes and involving a number of aviation professionals in the course of their jobs, reporting and engaging the issue of something very unusual in their domain during their
Did you
careers.
and Jeff work on that together?
I think we did a little bit, didn't we, Jeff?
Yeah, we did. David and I were, I guess, pretty much one of the first guys to jump on the photographs that surfaced out and trying to separate the crap from Shinola, and came away with one that was fairly decent.
You guys did a fine job, and I was able to write in my section regarding the photographic evidence that at the time of the writing I had not come across a credible example of what might have been seen there. A photograph worth getting behind, but you guys did a really good job at just taking the lead on that. That's not something my organization has a lot of strength with in the digital field. Dr. Haynes is an expert at film analysis, analog cameras.
Right. Well, the biggest thing I was kind of upset about with that was that we thought we had a fairly decent cell phone shot, and then, as we told you, it ended up looking like it was possibly tampered with, which could mean anything. I still think it's one of the more interesting shots I've come across in the past 10 years or so. But what do you do with something that you think has been legitimately tampered with? But the image itself of the UO, it doesn't look like it's been tampered with. I mean, that's just a real bizarre situation for us, and that's why we had to walk away from it, essentially.
You make the right call about credibility and image. So live to fight another day. Pick your hills to die on.
Yeah,
and if
exactly.
you can't credibly risk your credibility on it, then don't stick your neck out. I mean, we're already walking the leading edge on these things anyway.
Yeah, you got that right. Yeah.
And another good example is like the Mexican case from 2004. The FLIR case, that's an example of a case that has a prosaic explanation, but it won't die. It continues to be promoted, and it's unfortunate. We have a number of those things floating around out there, and it's hard to knock them down. People really want to believe around this stuff, and my opinion is, there's enough real cases out there. There's no reason to, if it isn't the real deal, don't bother.
Well, Ted? Was there any further follow-up on O'Hare to see if anything more came out of that besides the radar data and the? I know there was probably some pilots that talked to you about it. I mean, was there anything further on that might have
there was
been something we didn't know?
Let me offer it to you this way for you and your listeners. There was nobody that we spoke to in the capacity that you just described that was willing to be associated with the report.
Oh, okay.
And in that regard, the general answer is that those people do exist, and they're out there, and we did find them, and nobody wanted to stake their career on that experience. And it's understandable. I wrote a paper on it about bias and underreporting in the aviation community, and we didn't lose anything necessarily other than the activist power of hearing their voices.
Well, here's the other question I got for you about that, and this is one that I get asked a lot whenever it gets brought up on a message board somewhere, is that so many people saw it, so many people were there to see it. It was there for a long, extended period of time as UFO sightings go. Why do you think we don't have more visual evidence of it?
I have to tell you, I've done a few experiments. I've got a nice little Canon G10 PowerShot camera, And I've made some experiments with shooting pictures of things flying by that have fairly predictable trajectories. And unless it's something that you practice doing, it's very hard to do. And that's my first point. My second point is oftentimes when you're confronted by things that are really strange, the last thing you think of doing is the most obvious, which is taking a picture of it.
Right.
You know, so I would offer that that's a potential, and then I would also suggest that, there were, I believe, I have a friend who went to the terminals there and asked a few questions amongst the vendors there, and nobody wanted to even talk about it.
Right.
So there's a certain amount of fear that goes along with this also. So I guess there's a number of regulating factors, you know, in mindsets around this topic that kept the cameras from pointing and getting what they should have got. And there may well be some authentic pics out there that nobody wants to put out, you know.
Yeah.
It's frightening, I think.
I mean, do you think there's any truth to Aykroyd's statement back then that he's got video?
Well, I haven't seen anything develop from that.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. And I you know, and I'm not sure that it helps necessarily too much in this case to go too much further. We learned a lot. Well, we saw the FAA's reaction to it. We saw when we finished our report, we distributed it to the appropriate channels in the aviation community before we publicized it. Waited to allow them time to respond, and nobody responded. Nobody wanted to talk about this. And then we waited for a couple of months to let them digest it, and then we went ahead and did a public release of our research.
Right.
So we learned an awful lot about what's going on and what isn't inside the FAA, what various air carriers are faced when these events occur. If you can imagine, once Peter Davenport and company went public with that case about, I don't know, Pete got the report, gave us 3 or 4 days head start on it, and then went public and went to like the Chicago Tribune and brought John Hilkovich in and some other folks. And the blitz on the facilities there must have been just extreme, to the point where it was interfering with day-to-day business. So the effects that these events have when they occur at these facilities can be really it doesn't help the UFO community. It causes these folks to bunker up. They're getting called by every self-styled UFO investigator out there, you know, and they're trying to conduct business, and they got a ramp tower operator who's involved in all of this, and she's just trying to do her job, and you know, so there's a lot of things to consider here that require a softer touch, I think, and a little more finesse in the approach.
Right.
Still
an interesting case, though. Yeah.
Is there any way to tell if any of these things are just top secret military craft or anything like that? I mean, do you have any sort of percentage or even a guess?
Well, our rule with NARCAP, and we have a number of people who have the ability to discern certain types of profiles that might involve black projects of one type or another, and we avoid them like the plague. As I said, we have a 3,400 case file that goes back to the pretty much the entire history of powered flight, and so we have certain types of profiles that we're looking for, and when those things occur, those are the ones that we tend to primarily react to, and those tend to be the most productive because we already sort of know what the profile is. And we're looking for radar data. We're looking for all kinds of things. We did a little speculation around the O'Hare incident, and Larry Lemke and Kim Nafishoff, excellent researchers and good members of NARCAP, did a little speculation around the idea of magnetohydrodynamic drives, because they were looking for an explanation on how, when the object O'Hare left, it burned a hole through the clouds and left a tunnel there. I don't know if the hole was burned or not, but it was a coherent tunnel through the clouds that stayed there for some minutes. So they were trying to do a little bit of extrapolating around that in terms of known technologies that might be responsible for that. But I couldn't explain why a magneto-hydrodynamically driven U.S. Black Ops project is hovering 1,000 feet over the sea terminal at O'Hare International Airport in front of God and everybody. I don't have an answer to that.
So
in my opinion, a lot of these things are not black projects. They're whatever they are, they're not that.
Well, if you get the aviation community to pay attention, I mean, if you have your utopian scenario and they're like, yes, okay, great, what then? What comes next?
Continue documentation. We work with the FAA's Aviation Safety Reporting System, which is a confidential reporting database where pilots and air controllers can report incidents without punitive measures taken against them. It's a way the FAA hedges and doesn't lose safety data because people are afraid to report it. And we've been involved. Linda Connell, the director there, is aware of our program and supportive, and we've been involved on the edges of that since, 2001, I suppose. And so what we need to do is collect more data, real-time data if we can. We need pilots and air controllers to be willing to take the risk to make a confidential report either to the ASRS or to NARCAP. We follow the same ASRS protocols in protecting the identity of reporters. But we need to know about these things quickly because the FAA turns over the tower recording tapes and radar collection systems every couple of weeks. So the sooner we hear about it, the sooner we can move. We can get FOIA requests out and pull in the radar data, and which comes as encrypted hard copy, and you need to have a pretty good skill set in order to reconstruct the radar screens, but we do have the capability of doing that from hard copy. So,
you know what I find interesting? We spoke with Dr. Gregory Matloff, who's an astrophysicist who's worked with NASA and written books with Les Johnson. And, you've got a couple of guys from NASA on your board. So, what is it like for these guys who are in NASA, who are essentially trying... I mean, is it masturbatory that they're trying to find life out there when they really secretly believe that it's already here?
Well, the question is what they secretly believe. And I think these people, the folks I work with, are scientists, and they believe that more research needs to be done in this field. They don't necessarily believe that there's alien visitation going on. They do believe that there are unidentified aerial phenomena, many of them probably natural, and some of them maybe not, that are not accounted for, that pilots and air controllers have been reporting and that radars have been detecting. And in this regard, they're very concerned. The issue of aviation safety, a number of these cases, we've written some papers on this, where unidentified aerial phenomena of one kind or another get close to aircraft, and we see failures of communication systems and navigation systems, of autopilots disengaging, cockpit resource management being affected. If the crew's looking out the window, who's flying the plane. A whole variety of things going on that indicate that these particular types of problems have yet to be addressed adequately. That pilots and air crews have yet to really be prepared for the types of experiences that may occur. Now, we've done some surveys out there, and our estimate is that these things occur probably 1 in every 5 careers. So there is it's kind of similar to wind shear. It happens once every 6 or 7 careers, and yet a good deal of money is spent on wind shear detection. And those wind shear detectors were designed by Russell Targ. Some of you might recognize Russell Targ and Hal Putoff from SRX. So.
Very interesting.
So you're kind of weird closed loop. Russell came to our NARCAP meeting at the conference at MUFON this summer, and Bernie Heisch came walking in with Russell Targ in tow, and I was a bit surprised to see him there. It was very interesting that way. Very interesting man.
Are you going to be collaborating with him?
He might be involved with our organization a little bit. he was very interested in the aviation safety approach and the opportunity to collect data under a specific regime. So it gives you a chance to really kind of look at what's going on. We've tried to set up NARCAP programs that are similar to our own in Canada and Mexico to sort of normalize data collection so we can get a view of what's going on in the region as a whole. And this is sort of an ongoing process of developing these things. Again, we have the woo-woo factor. You're trying to find hard-nosed data collectors, and you oftentimes end up with UFO believers and alien believers who are not quite as discerning as you need them to be to take on the work.
So,
and represent the effort.
Do you know, are there other research groups the caliber of yours working in other areas of upology, ufology, whatever it's called?
Yes. There are some really good efforts. The French government expanded their UAP research team here about a year ago. Jean-Jacques Valesco stepped down. This is at their CNES, their equivalent of NASA, their space program. And they do have a UAP research group that's been active more or less since the early 60s, if I recall. It was founded by Claude Pereire, if I remember correctly. And their latest incarnation has seen a rise in funding and staff. And we've had sort of a collaborative relationship with them all along with NARCAP. And same thing goes with the Peruvians and the Chileans. They all have official groups, and we've been on a more or less cordial relationship with those organizations.
What about in terms of alien abduction and maybe a group of university level, scientists or psychologists looking into that? Because essentially what I'm trying to figure out here is, we always hear this complaint that mainstream science and all of this, they're not interested, and why aren't they? And maybe the answer is they are. They're just not telling us about it because we're a bunch of screw-ups.
In science, the leading edge is always pulled back by the more conservative middle. Do you understand what that means?
Yeah.
That those that are taking the risks out on the edge tend to be scorned and ridiculed by those who are a bit safer and able to take pot shots.
Uh-huh.
And this is true in many human endeavors, and it's particularly true in science. You have people like Hal Puthoff and others who are working on zero-point energy, while other people in science have never even bothered looking into zero-point energy because they consider it a fad and nonsense. We'll see, But the fact is that the guys in the middle will never crack the code. They'll never figure it out, whatever it is they're trying to do. It's the people taking the risks up front. Bringing good ideas and critical thinking and good skills to bear on the topic. So the issue of science looking carefully at these things, well, yes, science does look carefully at these things when there's something to look at. And it takes a certain type of scientist, a person who's like Dr. Haynes, who's essentially curious and willing to bring the tools of his study to bear. In Dick's case, it's perceptual psychology and visual acuity. Other scientists have other purviews that they can bring to bear. I'd like to see more science done. I'd like to see it done in an organized fashion. I'd like to see some symposia that are more or less focused on a couple of fairly basic topics, and so to set some foundation for further conversation on it. And there's a lot to be engaged. In that sense, for example, John Mack's studied his struggle with Harvard in his pursuit of doing abduction research. He'd been quite stimulated by Bud Hopkins and others to bring his skill set to bear, and what he found was something very interesting. And Drs. Colley and Beck and others have followed in his footsteps, and good work is being done around this topic of psychology and abductions or encounters with non-ordinary realities or altered states of consciousness or whatever it is you want to call it that people are experiencing. I'm not one to judge. I don't know what they're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Does Dr. Haynes find a conflict of interest with doing this stuff? On the one hand, really seriously looking into this and sort of NASA's laughing off, sneering at, face on Mars or moon anomalies or whatever. And not to say that they're not sneer-worthy, but that just, they take the attitude of the debunker in that sense, and now, clandestine, or however he's doing this, he's actually looking into this stuff. Well, I guess it wouldn't be clandestine. They know about it, right?
Well, they very much know about it. He's been working on this in the open inside of NASA. In some cases, the work they tasked him with was specifically related to UFO studies, trying to determine whether or not what pilots were seeing were actual physical objects in 3D space or a byproduct of the physiology of flying. He was tasked with that very early on in his career, and he's been involved with it ever since. And he's kept a credible, respectful attitude about developing data, and he's been very careful about it. And if anybody's a patriot in the classic sense, I would say Dick Haynes is. He keeps his cards close to his chest about those things that he's not to speak of. And as far as I know, he's never told me anything I shouldn't know. And there are things he knows that I shouldn't know. And so in that sense, he's been very, very careful. And yet we've had some access through his contacts at NASA that, without stressing the system, that have been very amenable to what we're trying to do and the image that we've tried to promote. On the last episode of the X-Files, KTVU 2 in the Bay Area ran a show about NARCAP, a 10-minute segment about NARCAP, and Linda Connell, the director from the ASRS group there, was interviewed and acknowledged that UAP reports come through her office from time to time and recognized our work. And then later, Brian Smith, at the time the director of the Aviation Safety Program Office at Ames, kept a copy of that segment spooled up in his office for anybody that had any questions. They could come in and find out right away what it is that he was, what that was about. So we've had some support, and of course none of this goes on without the approval of the NASA Public Relations Office. Nobody speaks on behalf of NASA or about NASA or relative to NASA without their approval. So, in some sense, they're okay with what we're doing, and to a small degree,
mm-hmm. Are there any groups within ufology that you do like what they're doing? I don't even want to say endorse, but you kind of like what they're like. I'm thinking like Leslie Kean with her better than Greer and Bassett disclosure movement. Does that do anything for you? Leslie joined our organization when we first kicked off in 2000, and she's been a loyal NARCAP member and a booster for our work. She's referred to us a number of times in her articles that she's been published in, and I had the privilege of working with her on the Coalition for Freedom of Information project. I wrote a bit of the content for the website and participated in some of the discussions and decision making around that. She's at the time it was under the aegis of Podesta Mattoon, John Podesta's brother. They were helping. I think the Sci-Fi Channel was footing some of the money and looking into UFO-related research. So Leslie went after the Kecksburg case, I guess, with NASA, and NASA lost that lawsuit and was ordered to surrender up a few boxes of documents, which I have not heard whether they came through or not, and also to pay Leslie's legal fees to the tune of some $50,000. Wow.
So that is a good effort. The Coalition for Freedom of Information, that's a good effort. I put my name on it. It's a good effort. There's some good ideas in there. The website needs further development. We're all kind of like, all of this is a labor of love. Leslie's not making any money doing this. I'm not making any money doing this. We're just trying to do the right thing, and the CFI site is particularly good. So Coalition for Freedom of Information.org. Definitely want to get behind those folks.
Do you think disclosure is even possible?
Well, if it is what everybody thinks it is, let's find some common terms here. A non-human intelligence making incursions into the Earth domain. And some of the unusual observations that people are reporting and detecting are involve this non-human intelligence? Can people handle that? I don't think the body politic believes they can. I think they probably can. It kind of depends on how it goes down, how the information actually gets out there. And what we're seeing, I think, with England and recently Denmark, I believe, the Danish Air Force released a bunch of UFO files in the last week or so, and the French released a bunch of their files and more to come. The British have been releasing their files pretty steadily. Brazilians have been doing the same. The Chileans gave us a bunch of their files that I published on the NARCAP site. So, there's sort of a grassroots movement to at least elevate the discussion. Mm-hmm. And I think that has to happen. And once conservative, responsible, credible individuals acknowledge that they do see unusual things from time to time and that further work needs to be done to resolve just what those observations are, and then a sincere attempt is made at doing that, I think, yes, then people will be ready to engage the idea of a non-human intelligence being present, if that's what the conclusion is.
Are people reporting generally the same things in all of these countries? Have you looked at a number of reports from the various countries that have released documents?
More or less, the threads of commonality are striking, and over time, going back to the 40s, we have these common geometric forms and simple geometric forms. You have spheres and triangles and rectangles and oblate spheroids and cylinders, and it's been that way all the way back to the 40s. And then you have unusual light phenomena. So, in a sense, yeah, there's commonalities across many countries.
Has the technology evolved at all over that time?
Well, I don't know. It seems to be the same. It seems to be the same things doing the same thing, behaving in the same way.
Because it does seem that more people are seeing mile-long triangular craft now than I've ever heard.
Yeah, the stories seem to be supporting macro observations, like the British pilots with their big disc and or cylinder. I'm not sure which it was. I think it was a disc. And large cylinders are another one, quite large ones. And I don't know what that implies. I'm not sure what those forms are about, and but they are quite intriguing. And I think that it's about time we took it all a little more seriously. We have some really good reports. America West 564 out of Albuquerque, or the Albuquerque ARTCC. One of their controllers, we have the tape and everything. He has a pilot who's seeing something unusual, and the whole crew's piled up in the front of the plane looking at it, and they call NORAD, and NORAD ends up detecting the thing, and it doesn't have a transponder. It's quite large. A 747 is about 200 feet long, and the crew estimated this at 400 feet, which is always suspect. It's hard to estimate distance, but that's what they guessed. It was described as a long cigar-shaped something with a series of flashing strobe lights running down its length, and it was detected by NORAD on NORAD radars, and there you have it. It was heading northbound, and if you look at the trajectory, it may have had to cross into U.S. airspace from Mexico.
Does it feel as though this is building to anything, or does it, looking back across this large span of time back to the 40s, has it always been just pockets of UFO waves here and there, and it always feels like it's building to something at all times, and then it never does?
Well, if I was suspicious that this was indicative of the activities of a non-human intelligence, I would be suspecting that it is a very busy non-human intelligence, that it is busier than heck, and that our detections of it through just through the aviation cases alone, where you see this bell curve, is actually our awareness rising. It isn't the presence of more of them showing up from 1940 to 1945. It's our awareness of them is rising. So in terms of how active this thing might be, that would be a way to look at it, that instead of suspecting that it's coming and it's more active, that it's just been very active all along. And that's where folks like Drs. Colley and Beck and others Mac and others may come in handy in helping divine what those things might be about, and whether they're actually related to something involving this phenomenon or not.
Jeff?
So.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, then I guess...
Did I skirt that minefield well enough there? How was it doing there, dancing?
I thought that was perfect.
That was great.
Absolutely perfect.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see if you can skirt this one. This will be my final question, which is, do you have a dog in the alien abduction fight? Do you prefer John Mack's work over Bud Hopkins or Hopkins over Mack? And what do you think of hypnosis as a tool?
Okay, well, I'll take on the hypnosis thing first, okay? It seems really interesting to me that the CIA sat on the board of the False Memory Foundation, and that the idea of debunking hypnosis as a tool for engaging human memories seemed to come along about the same time that people were using hypnosis to try and engage people who had claimed to have had encounters with non-human intelligences. Prior to that, hypnosis seemed like a pretty good tool for reconstructing crime scenes and, picking up the last two digits on a license plate or helping somebody remember how something happened. Even if it wasn't quite admissible in court, it was certainly considered a tool for all kinds of things, behavior modification, all kinds of other stuff. So, in my opinion, I think that hypnosis really involves the sincerity of the hypnotized person, the skill of the hypnotizer themselves, and then what it is they're trying to deal with, which may not be so easy to tease out using those methods. There are state-specific memories where you can't access them unless you're in a similar state to when you acquired the memory. There are other types of memories out there that require certain types of guidance to even engage. So it's tricky work, and I don't know that I would ever. I don't think that court testimony ought to stand necessarily on hypnosis, but I think that as a tool for trying to understand what happened, in the right hands, the right person, in the right situation, is probably quite useful. So that's the first part of it. The next part is the difference, the discussion of Hopkins and Mack, and when I first came into public light with the ufology thing. It was after we founded NARCAP. Graham Birdsall, who's passed away, invited NARCAP to do a presentation at his UFO magazine conference in 2001. And John Mack and Bud Hopkins and a number of other folks, Nick Pope, and a number of other people were there at that conference. And I had the privilege to meet Dr. Mack, who seemed like a very fine human being and a very careful man. His approach to trying to engage this discussion of human encounters with non-ordinary realities and non-human intelligences, I think were sincere, and I think his work was provocative. His detractors, for the most part, it seemed to me, were far more concerned with the image of Harvard than they were with the curiosity and the willingness to engage data wherever it leads, that the objectivity that they so seem to espouse on one hand and not live out on the other. Alan Dershowitz weighed in on this. I think I think he represented Mack in dealing with the board of censure at Harvard. And for some reason, I'm thinking of Daniel Sheehan as well. I think he was involved with that also. Yeah. But the end result was that John was allowed to continue doing his work, and I think it was good work. And I think that John, was influenced by Stanislav Grof and other folks in the Transpersonal School of Psychology, which is a very powerful and I think a useful style of psychology for people who are who seem to be dealing with these types of events in a personal way and aren't able to integrate it. So I would recommend if anybody out there is actually really wrestling with this on a personal level, that they take a look at the transpersonal schools and take a look at the work of John Mack. And I think we wouldn't have John out there if it wasn't for Bud Hopkins. I don't think. I think Bud is a very, very bright man in his own right, and it's easy to criticize from afar, but sit in the room with the guy and try to deal with, try and make your case. He's very logical and very critical person, very careful person, and simply because he's an artist or he doesn't have a PhD does not disqualify his skills of discernment one bit in my mind. I don't know that everybody he's dealing with is exactly what they present themselves to be. I don't know that Bud is right in every example or engagement of the topic, but there's a there with that topic, and it needs to be looked at much more closely. And we owe Bud and John a great deal in promoting that conversation. And people like Dr. Colley and Janet Colley and Tom Beck, Dr. Beck, who continue in that line of work. There are others out there, but those names come to mind. They're my friends. So.
Well, what do you say then to the myriad psychologists who say that hypnosis is not the proper tool for this? There does seem to be a body of people who say that it's not, and they're not CIA. They're just people.
Well, here's the perspective. I think with transpersonal psychology, they're looking at the idea that a person has PTSD. That's probably one of the prime indicators of exposure to a non-human intelligence in a personal way. I would expect would be that a person would be scarred. They'd have PTSD and they would dissociate. But process-oriented psychologists, other schools of psychology deal with these things in other ways. And in my opinion, they don't go quite as deep into things as transpersonal psychologists do. And even then, when they're working somebody through understanding what these things are about, acknowledging PTSD, they don't always do hypnotic regression or hypnosis at all. There are other ways to work and release memories. And a lot of times people are coming with their memories intact. They don't need hypnosis. They remember it quite well exactly what it is that's on their mind, and they're quite traumatized by it. So other techniques like EMDR and other types of therapies, some of the experimental therapies using entheogens, a number of different approaches to engage this discussion that I think are valid. But the primary thing to understand is that if somebody's been exposed to this sort of thing, the first thing to look for is trauma and hypervigilance.
Sure, but okay, but I just want to get back to hypnosis for a sec, because so is it a coincidence that people who go to Mac and Leo Sprinkle have sort of happy-go-lucky experiences, and people who go to Hopkins and Fowler have negative experiences, which reflect the therapist's own views on these things?
Well, I've listened to a number of Mac's sessions with different people, and I didn't find him to be leading people at all, that they were engaging what they truly felt were their own memories. And in some cases, traumatic memories. There is always the potential that is what's going on, that there's confabulation or lying or attention getting, or that the idea of an alien abduction is a little bit easier to stomach than the idea that daddy did it. Mm-hmm. And so there's always room for that. And I think it's up to the individual therapist to really be discerning enough to understand that there's a full scope of experiences that humans can have that result in trauma. And one of those experiences seems to be involve these things that tend to, well, they manifest as what Mac and Hopkins were looking at. They're real enough for the person involved. They carry quite a charge for the individual involved, and I think that, looking at that individual from a perspective of post-traumatic stress disorder is probably a good way to begin trying to understand what they're dealing with and how to go about it. And hopefully even a process-oriented psychologist can understand that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to get to tonight?
Well, don't look up. Just don't look up, okay? I mean, I've been, don't look up, guy. I'm just kidding. Jeremy, I really appreciate the work you do out there. I don't generally do a lot of media, but I've enjoyed getting to know you. You have a great radio personality and a great voice. And Jeff, we did a little bit of work before, and I'm really, really happy that we got a chance to at least be on speaking terms. And
yeah, me too.
So, and if any of you guys get out here to Hawaii, or if anybody in listener range wants to contact me and come out and swim with dolphins, it won't cost them a thing other than their airfares. Just come out and do it.
I'll be back. Don't you worry.
Yeah, you come and do that. You come and do that, Jeremy. There's plenty of dolphins to go around, and it's all beautiful. So, other than that, I answer all emails through Ted_Roe@narcap.org. And through my website at narcap.org. And if anybody has any questions, if there's any aviation folks out there within earshot that have something to tell me or would like to get involved with NARCAP, we certainly could use that help. I'm also looking for administrative help with my organization, so if anybody wants to step on board and give me a hand, I'm certainly willing to consider it. So drop me an email, and best of luck to everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. You got it, guys.
Jesus, stop that. Have some dignity, man. You're not a stupid DJ. You're not a stupid DJ. Well, Jeff, that was a fine discussion with the Ted Roe. We started talking about the woo-woo factor because that's something that bothers you and I.
Yes.
And the hoaxers and the charlatans also bother you and I.
Oh, yeah.
And the horrible researchers, the limited researchers, the dopes of ufology also bother you and I. But there's another thing that bothers the great we, the great us, the you and me.
Right.
Jeff, and that's people who, two things, really. One, people who just blatantly steal your ideas, like your Little Richard, and pretend that they came up with these great ideas themselves.
Right.
And people who who just don't seem to get it, and when you point out that they don't get it, it's like a game of I know you are, but what am I?
My dad can beat up your dad.
Yeah, well, it becomes ridiculous. They start accusing you of being the very thing that they're revealing themselves to be in the midst of argument. But let's get back to that first one, because that's been bothering you for a little bit now, which is people, it seems, stealing your ideas, stealing my ideas, stealing show ideas, and making them their own. And now it's hard to tell whether someone is actually doing that, or if we're all, a whole collective of people are starting to come together and thinking the same way about these things magically, and so it just feels like people are stealing our ideas.
Yeah, well...
What are your thoughts there?
What are my thoughts?
Yes. And do you want to name names?
I think that we should let the audience kind of do that little look-see on their own, really.
Okay.
There's a particular blog out there that I mean, it's been incredibly blatant, really, the past X amount of months, that it seems like whenever you and I talk about a particular subject and we kind of formulate some kind of interesting theory, or it's a subject or a tandem subject to ufology that we make a postulation on, and it's interesting. And when you have a good idea, that when you have some kind of inspired thought, and you put it out there, it's okay when people talk about it, but a lot of times what I'm seeing is, people having this stuff on blogs, and all of a sudden it's like, they're acting like it's an inspired thought that they had, and you've had it on your blog for, a month or just 3 months ago, and all of a sudden it comes up, and I think because maybe some people are better known in this field than others, then that ends up being the person who, is kind of, I don't want to say credited with the idea, because nobody really gives a shit who gets credited with it, or at least I don't. It's kind of irking, because I see that there are people out there who are pretty well thought of in this field as being cutting edge and the new wave of ufology, and really all I see is people who are lifting ideas from every corner of ufology that they can find them, and kind of putting them on their own blog almost in the same format and saying, This is my idea. And I'm like, And then when you hear other people in the field, other big names saying, well, I think these are the up-and-comers, it's like, where the hell are you getting this? That, I don't see where a lot of these people have any real inspired thought at all. It just seems to be amalgamations from the web or whatever the newer theory is. And it's not, believe me, it's not only ours all the time. It's other people's ideas, too, that I see someone say this and then, boom, it's on a major blog somewhere.
Yeah, well, there's been a writer to our very own website saying, a first-time poster saying, well, I see it this way, and it sounds exactly like what I've been talking about, and no one else, as far as I can tell, has been talking about since I released my damn book in 2003. So, I write for UFO Magazine. I mean, what are the odds that this guy is using the same language and the same sardonic sort of stuff and all of that and saying the exact same thing that I said years ago, and have, expounded upon since then?
Yeah.
And it's not coming from me. I mean, what are the odds that it's not someone who, read UFO Magazine a bunch of times, forgot where he read it, like you had said, privately. That's probably what happened. And, is writing it. And I guess there's something that's good about that. I mean, obviously we want our ideas out there, or we want our ideas to mean something to people. But I just know that, when I talk about Jacques Vallée stuff, I cite Jacques Vallée. When I talk about David Biedny, if I steal quotes from David Biedny, I attribute them to David Biedny, I mean, that's just what you do.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I'm already hearing grumblings that, from listeners that are probably going to think, well, you guys are just wanting credit for things, and believe me, it's not that.
No, in fact, this particular person I know for a fact does care in that way. He does listen to this show and other shows and think to himself, what can I do to top what a certain guest has done?
Right.
Because I've had that conversation with him.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
so, I mean, it's blatant. It's just blatantly obvious. And when you pointed it out to me, I thought, well, maybe this is the case of we're all just sort of coming to the same conclusions at the same time, or formulating new ideas at the same time. But then you pointed something very specific out, and I went, "Oh my God, no! That's clearly he's stealing from you."
And here's Jeff's self-deprecation for the day, and Jeremy can tell everybody this, and I don't mind him saying it. I have a lot of inspired thought, but a lot of times it's very difficult for me to verbalize it. I can write it much better than I can verbalize it. And I have in the past related to Jeremy that I feel, because he and David verbalize much better than I do a complex idea, whereas I have to think and write it so that I'm sure that I'm being understood correctly. I told him, I said, I'm almost intimidated to a certain point to have discussions with you guys because I'm outgunned in that respect, that I can't bang it out in a cohesive way like that, because my ideas and theories tend to be so complicated that I feel like I have to spiral in on them rather than just take a direct route to get my point across. So it's like, if I feel that way about all of this stuff, and then I'm looking at different places around the web that seem to be lifting ideas, I'd be fairly dense about noticing that. This is so blatantly obvious that I'm noticing it. So that's kind of like, when I see that, I think, oh, should I say something to Jeremy about this? Because is that going to look like we're being, egotistical and kind of trying to be like a little bit righteous about it? No, believe me, it's not that. It's just, at a certain time, it just irks you. It's like, what do you think, that was your freaking idea? Give me a break,
Well, I mean, I have no proof that this has happened to me, but it feels like, I've gone to like ATS or back in the day Book of Thoth or one of those message boards, and I've written sort of long diatribe, quote unquote, deep responses to people, trying to give a different point of view or trying to help them flesh out what I think they're getting at, or either what they're doing right or wrong. Mm-hmm. And I'll get no response in response to what I said. Now, I'll put something that I think is long and well thought out and eloquent and all of that, blah, blah. and you get no response from people.
Or thread killers,
Yeah, and then, we're thread killers. But then, give it a couple of days, and suddenly people are using that same language.
Yes.
Wrongly.
Right.
Because they don't have the depth of experience or whatever. They haven't thought it out, whatever it is. But something about that, it feels like something about what I had written spoke to them enough to try to steal it. Now, I don't know that that's actually happening, of course, but it does feel like that sometimes.
It does. And
definitely the thread killer part is true, because I've definitely written things that are better thought out than that warrant more response than nothing. But people, again, it goes back to they want to go back to like talking about reptilian shapeshifters and
exactly,
things that are just nonsense, because that they can wrap their little wiener brains around that.
It is weird, and I think at least if nothing else, when you are hanging around this long enough and you have an inspired thought, you're kind of almost, well, is that stupid? Am I going to be thought crazy for mentioning this? And you go over it in your head and you go, no, it's actually, hell, anything is possible, so let's throw it out there. And it takes a certain amount of oomph to put it out there and say, this is what I think might be happening. What do you guys think? And either you'll get, that's insane, or, that kind of response. So it does take a certain amount of thought and work to put it into writing, and then to actually put it out there on your own back. And then to have somebody come along and just, say, yeah, that's good, let me use that, and they pull it off and then put it up on there. And then worse, to see commenters on their blog say, oh, that's so wonderful, you're such an amazing thinker. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to be called an amazing thinker, but at least give me the credit for having the balls to put it out there first. It's like, it takes a little bit of gumption in this field, as volatile as it is. So I guess that's where it kind of irks me, is I don't care, as long as the answer gets found, I don't care how we get there, and I don't care who gets credit for it. But it's like, can you at least put an acknowledgement in there of something? Like, I saw this here, or I thought about this there. No, it's like plagiarism to me.
Well, it is plagiarism, because if you're not acknowledging it, because what should be happening, I think, would be that you read something that inspires you to expand on it or to think in a different way, and you acknowledge that that's what happened, and now here's your addition to what that person wrote.
Right.
Or your challenge to it, or whatever, It should bring you to another place. It shouldn't be just you regurgitating the same thing and taking credit for it.
Yes.
That's not helping. That's not getting us anywhere.
No. It is really irking, though. I mean, that's...
And then there's the other thing of, to me, it's like, I wrote this blog post that I put at Paratopia and at UFO Magazine's blog, ufomag.com blog, which I think is called "To Put Contactees to Rest, It Takes a Village, ... analogy." Clever title, right?
Yes. You are the Art Bell of writing.
So, because I had been reading there about, and I've heard these bloggers talk about contactees and even, looking around on the web, and I think it could have been Greg Bishop who had a thing about, were contactees an artistic movement, or did they really believe what they were saying? It's like, right. No, there's actually another answer, which is that they were, crazy. I mean, there are two answers, really. One is blatant hoaxing, and the other is that when you are confronted with the anomalous, a certain section of people are going to, either delusionally or intentionally, set themselves up as the ambassador to that thing. And so I wrote what I think is a pretty eloquent, again, I'll use that word.
God damn, you're good, Vaeni.
Yeah, I'm so good that I have to use that same word again. If obvious, I think, piece about that. And I got, I figured Michael Horn would come on disguised as a woman or something and bash me, but no, in fact, he didn't have to. My fellow writers at UFO Magazine took that mantle.
Ooh.
Two of whom want to write like I do. Two of whom have told me, we think you're a great writer. Separately, they've told me this, and we wish we could write like you. Well, okay, one way that you can write like me is to not be wrong all the time. That's what. No, come on.
Oh,
I kid the writer.
you egotistical bastard.
No, but I'll just deal with the one guy. His name's Mike Good. I could be wrong. Maybe he didn't write that. I'm pretty sure he did, and maybe he'll hear this and correct me. But I'm pretty sure he told me he wanted to write like me, and lo and behold, he does have kind of a smarmy, ha ha ha, wink nudge attitude.
Oh, like a jackass.
Like a jackass, like me light, But there's no real depth there. It's the illusion of depth.
Okay.
It's saying a bunch of words that don't add up to anything, really, in the end, and yet somehow I'm glib. Somehow on this thread, if you look at this thread, the through line is that I am wrong. I am the one who is being judgmental and closed off. There is nothing obvious. And no, they're basically throwing away a basic psychology 101, to say, as this Mike Good character does, that no, all of these things are alien influenced. Contactees, hoaxers, Gandhi,
what?
Martin Luther King.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
All of these are on this alien agenda. And I wrote saying, isn't this offensive? Is anyone finding this offensive? And all I got back were responses, again, about me. About how glib and closed off I am. I'm like, are you guys fucking retarded? And now if I say, are you guys fucking retarded? Them's fighting words. Right. Oh, now you're arrogant. Right. No, you're fucking retarded, dude. That's the end. And if you don't like that, then don't be retarded.
Right.
To me, there are certain things that are black and white, which is what defines the gray area. And if we can't say that basic psychology exists in the world, then why are we writing about any of this? If everything is the one thing, and that thing essentially is God, because that's what you're saying. You're saying there's this alien intelligence that controls everything, like puppet masters that controls everything from civil rights leaders to hoaxers to experiencers, etc., all things in between. Well, there's a word for that, and it's called God. So you've just created yourself a nice little religion. Well, no, you're just closed off and closed-minded and glib. Well, no, I'm sorry.
Well, why didn't they explain their position then? What is their position if it's not that?
Well, to explain the position, Mike Good takes quotes from, the Vedas and Albert Einstein, basically saying that all of life is an illusion. But once again, we're back to you're misunderstanding what the word illusion is. It's a necessary illusion. Is life an illusion? Yes. Have I had the big God experience where I saw the world from all these other perspectives? Yes. So do I know that this is, in some sense, everyday life is bullshit? Yeah. But it's something that also has rules. It is the thing that you have to live.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't do any good to say, it's an illusion, therefore nothing is true. No. There are specific facts and truths within the illusion.
Right. Try not getting up and going to work.
Yeah, try not getting up and going. Exactly. Try telling a homeless guy, dude, don't worry, it's an illusion. Try telling an abuse victim that. Try telling Iraq that,
Right.
Don't worry, it's just an illusion. You'll be fine.
Right.
That's all well and good in theory, and in actuality, it's the illusion that we live and are. Yeah. So don't throw that out there like like that means something. It's meaningless to me.
Yes.
And the reason that I know that is because help me out, Jeff. What am I? I don't want to say smarter, deeper, any of that. I really don't think. I just think that I think I am of average means, and this connotes below average. Let's put it that way.
Well,
I really think any 5-year-old would not listen to that argument. Well, honest to God, to me, it's the same argument as like Billy Meyer walking around with a fucking toy gun and models next to fake trees. Everyone knows this. Children know this. Children know what they're looking at. And it takes an adult to theorize away what a fucking child knows. It takes a real adult to theorize that away.
Okay. Take a drink now. I think that the crux of the issue, I understand why you're aggravated about the responses. I get that. And I think you're right. I think it's ridiculous. But I think the overall crux of the issue is for the audience to understand what it is. Number one, they should read it. But number two, let me give you the summary of this. Essentially, the question posed by Jeremy is, why are we still addressing the contactee thing when so much of it has been proven to be garbage. And why does this keep getting hacked up in our face time after time after time? And I've been saying for a long time, it's like, what is the point of engaging this at all anymore? But people still do. I mean, you've got the Jonathan Reed thing being brought up again. You've got Adamski being brought up time and time again. Meyer brought up time and time again. And people fighting for it for days, for and against. When nobody wants to leave the debate alone for a second and really examine the data that's there, that's been found. And you can use the Meyer case as a prime example. The photographs of Asket and Near, faked. The wedding cake ship, faked.
But why are people who like my writing, like my style, think I'm together and with it and blah, 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 why are they fighting me over hoaxers and charlatans and not upset about the hoaxers and charlatans? Why are they trying to incorporate that into their worldview,
right, instead
of calling it what it is? What any 5-year-old would understand it to be.
See, here's the thing. You've got this controversy brewing over this stuff that's still been going on for a long time. I think now that more people are coming to the paranormal, and it's obvious that more people are, I think that everybody who's been here recognizes that, okay? So when you've got bloggers out there that's really all they do, they editorialize the subject, they write about it, they don't actually do anything, as in a hands-on type of way, then you got to realize that subjects like that, hoaxers like that, who are out there doing these things and generating controversy, that gives them something to write about. When you start peeling away the layers of the UFO onion, and you start tearing off, this is all stuff people want to write about. They want that controversy. They need that drama. And I think not only is your argument part of their drama, but that subject matter is part of their drama. So, I mean, what I wrote in that post was, essentially, why don't we stop arguing about this stuff? Because if we don't stop living the trash of the past, we're never going to get anywhere in this field. It's already stagnated to a large degree. So if we don't get past this, there's plenty of interesting things to write about without addressing this crap. It's been put to bed. It's done.
And then your post got ignored, so that means it'll be coming up on someone else's blog as their own idea.
Again, it's the thread killer. So it's the thread killer that will appear somewhere else. Right. And it will be, we all should leave this shit in the past because it's crap. And believe me, that was a hard lesson learned for me because I was up against the Meyer case for a long time until you realize that most people get it and those who don't have bigger problems than belief in the Meyer case. You know what I'm saying? So at that point, you just say, okay, I'm done. I walk away from this because it's not worth the time and effort that I'm putting into it.
It's dumb on top of indignant, or indignant on top of dumb, I should say.
Well, it's an insult to intelligence is what it is, because any child can look at this crap.
I mean, like these posts, somebody posted there, Leslie Gunter posted, after I said, I'm going to leave this thread, and I'm not going to look back, and I'm not going to respond anymore, then she had the fucking balls to chime in and say, if people know me, you know that I can't just sit back, and yeah, of course you can't, when I fucking left the conversation, but okay. So she chimes in and says, what? And says, well, that basically I sound like Bush. I sound judgmental and dictatorial. You're either with me or against me. It's like, so basically you're indignant and wrong-headed about what I'm, what my thrust is. You know what I mean? Like, not just the topic at hand, but you're even wrong about what I'm doing here. It's not you're with me or against me. It's that I want to believe that all of them are actually smart people. I think they're probably decent people, I mean, sure. I'm friends with at least a couple of them.
Right.
And so, I don't know. To me, I want the cup to be half full. I want to, wring their necks and go, I know you get this. Because you're adults. Yeah. I know you get this because you do understand basic psychology, right? Not everything in the world is a giant mystery, correct? Because if everything is this one thing, then once again, what are you writing about? Why are you even writing? What other theory could you have? Other thing could interest you other than alien presence controls all of this? How are you not upset that this dude just said fucking Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Jesus and Buddha and gray aliens and contactees are all under the same influence to get this alien agenda out there? I mean, really? You're either ignoring or endorsing by ignoring that to attack me, who you think is sort of, I don't know, smart and together and a good writer and all of this? I mean, it just is, it's inconceivable to me that we're even having this discussion. And it's funny, you know, I tell my mom these things and she's just like, God, don't you ever get sick of this? I mean, it's just like, it's a religion. There's nothing more to it than that. Yeah. So don't you get sick of doing battle about these things? And the ironic thing is that it is a religion. It's fundamentalism. But they think that I'm the one being the religious one. Like, I think that's the thing that gets me. It's like, not only are they wrong, but they have their argument backwards. You know, like, I'm the one being judgmental. I'm the one doing the religious, thou shalt not think. No. I'm just pointing out that you are wrong, that everyone knows you're wrong except for you, and I don't even believe that. Like, really? Alfred Lemberg is one of the people that's arguing against me here, and I feel like Alfred is a nice guy, and he doesn't like it when people pick on poor Michael Horn, because he doesn't understand that Michael Horn is a fucking vicious dipshit who will email you at the drop of a hat to be like, see? Meyer's prophecies have come true. And, you fat friend who does Photoshop. I mean, he sits there and he attacks, I don't know if Dave even knows this, because he didn't have the balls to email it to Dave. He emailed it to Gene. Right. But, making fun of Dave's weight, making fun of, all of this stuff that he does, just for the shits and giggles. I mean, it's not like I talk to Horn, no, but he'll email me these things. Yeah. Or he'll come to our message board and try to fuck it up, So he's a vicious little vindictive dipshit. And, but again, I don't think, someone like Lemberg sees that. His interactions with him have been nice, and I think that he doesn't like bullies. And so in this instance, he sees me as bullying these people. Yeah. So against his better judgment of saying Meyer is full of shit and a hoaxer, he doesn't like my attitude about that, so he's going to defend it. That's what I think is going on there, and I think that is intellectually dishonest. The end. Not to be specific.
Well, I think it's all about the drama. I mean, I go back to the individualist, rationale for trying to get involved into a discussion like that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And if you extrapolate their idea, which is the idea is that the trickster element, you have to expect hoaxes in. So it's all part of the trickster element as to why there are people faking pictures and video and cases. And so that's all part of the trickster element. Well, no, sometimes somebody faking stuff is just that, somebody faking stuff. I don't get why everybody has to associate a paranormal answer to something so blatantly obvious, black and white, and cut and dry. And that's just what I said. And really, the only way to become indignant about that and to become sort of a catalyst of retribution for people who fake stuff is to go get off your collective backsides and go out and do work yourself. Investigate things, interview people, talk to people, make the phone calls, do whatever. But you can't sit and just randomly surf the net and decide, yeah, I'll write about that today. That's not investigating anything. So you have no vested interest in your own devotion to the subject. What is that devotion? What vested? You're not doing anything. You're just writing. The commentators have just not. It used to be if you were a commentator, you had to know about the subject with which you were writing, and they may know the regurgitated facts, but have they really been involved actively in doing anything? I don't see that that's been the case. I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't. Reagan Lee certainly has had experiences. I mean, I don't doubt that. So to a degree, yeah, she's got some kind of interest that's deep seated with her, and that's okay. But, I mean, a lot of them, I don't see where anybody's doing anything. So how do you really and that's the difference, is we've engaged these people. I don't think that they've engaged those people in that kind of, you need to prove your case. Where's your evidence? Okay, here's your evidence. Okay, well, your evidence is crap. What else do you have? Well, that's all we got. Okay, well, then I have to dismiss this because you're not passing through the standard of evidence here. It's as simple as that. I'm not going to say, well, because it's this. We have to expect this from the trickster element that we're going to have hoaxers. No, sometimes a hoaxer is just a hoaxer. That's the end. There is no grandiose answer. It doesn't fit into the plan. It's just an opportunist. That's all. Why can't we just say that? Why are we so ashamed to say that? There are people in this field who are desiring an answer. And the sad part about it is that most people out there want the simplest answer, and they want you to tell them what it is. What were you recently told? The people out there who are the most successful in this field are the ones who claim an answer. Those are the people that people want to hear, because people are desperate for an answer. Stop fucking looking for an answer. You know, if there's not been anything I can beat into people's heads over 20 years, stop looking for an answer. Okay? Stop. We don't know the questions yet. Watch. Question. You know, that's all you have to do. What doesn't pass through the filter of the standard of evidence has to be chucked. Stop holding on to it because of your pride, your ego, your need to believe. The real other in all this is strong enough to take the bullets that you're going to shoot at it. It's strong enough to stand up to that. It's there. Why are we wasting time with bullshit like this? It boggles my mind. And it is because people either A, love the drama, B, which I'm convinced that's Michael Horn's deal. I don't believe he believes any of Meyer's case. I don't believe it. I don't care how many people say, oh no, I think he does. I don't think he does. I think it's just a need for drama and a desire for negative attention. Because you see, I mean, when he pokes at you, that's what that is. He wants you to come back with something. And when you don't, it's disappointment. So then it just gets even more vicious. He's looking for a reaction. I no longer give him that reaction. So that boils it down for me. You've got the desire to believe, the need for an answer. Because this phenomena presents very profound questions to us. And people love a good mystery. Let's not forget that. But they want an answer. They're not patient enough to hang in for years and check back and forth with it. They want an answer, and they want it now. And they're willing to pay for it. That's the sad part. They're willing to pay Greer $800 to be taken out and shown, you know, Venus and airplanes and whatever kind of bullshit that goes along with that. They're willing to pay for that. Do you think people aren't going to go, man, I could do that. I could take people out in the woods for $800 and make them sign a non-disclosure so they can't say it was bullshit. I can do that. You think there aren't opportunists in this world, folks? Get over it. There are. They are sucking you dry for it. And to attribute that to some facet of this phenomena is just ridiculous. It is not part of the phenomena. It is part of human reaction in seeing a desire for an answer. That's what it's about. But see, you write that on that board or in that blog post, and it's ignored because, you know.
Because it makes sense.
Yeah. Like you say, it'll come up
It's not wild and imaginative. It doesn't get the fire going in your belly to really start thinking in new and bold ways about nothing.
I don't see any blogger out there talking about new and exciting ways. I don't see it. Where are this? I mean, where is this stuff? I want to know. Where are this? How'd you like that?
Where them at?
I'm a college graduate. So, I mean, I think the aggravation with the field is just reaching a fever pitch, and either something's going to bust or, you know, I can't believe, to be honest with you, that more people aren't picking up on the dimensional part. I mean, Jacques Vallée, of course, I think a lot of people look at what he wrote about different postulations on the theory, and and kind of putting aside the ETH and look at this direction. Isn't this interesting? Aren't these interesting things that we can look at? And look what he got for it. It's just, I think people see that and they go, well, we're not going that way. Give me a break. I could give a shit what this field thinks about me. I don't care. I'm looking into psychedelics for this shit, because I see a thread of commonality. I could give a damn what anybody says. Oh, well, he's into drugs. No, he's not into drugs. He's looking at commonalities that may be outside this field, but might hold some definite stuff. But, of course, if I do ever publish anything, that'll just be plagiarized anyway. It's just another part of the frustration of being actively involved, and I think most people in this field are interested, but people who are actively involved, I don't think they make up the majority. I really don't.
Back to the Sour Hour with your host.
Yeah, I know. We are sour tonight. God. We had a bad day or something. It's just...
Well, no. I mean, I don't know. Me personally, it just irks me. These are people that I like personally, and
I'll be honest with you, I don't get it either. I mean, I postulated the idea of what I thought might be the answer, but I don't know that that's it. I don't know what's going on there. That's all very bizarre to me. It really is. I can't imagine anybody reading that and saying, "Oh, I don't agree with that." I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know. I'm just going to harp on this stuff longer, and it's just going to get me into more battles with friends. But
you can be friends and disagree. I mean, it's not like...
All right, well, then how about this? Al Lemberg, God love you, but I did watch The Silent Revolution of Truth with you, Jeff, and honestly, I know that I'm sour on all of that stuff, and as clearly, right?
Right.
But throw all of that aside, just on a filmmaking level, that is not more than a cult indoctrination video that thankfully falls on deaf ears because nobody gives a shit about the Meyer case.
Right.
Except for me when I yell about it. as Leslie Gunter pointed out,
yeah.
I'm the only one keeping this stuff alive at this point, so why don't I just shut my pie hole and it will all go away? Well, there might be something to that, Leslie.
Although there's nothing to Leslie's comment about desiring me to turn blue when she didn't even know me. Thank you. Continue. Thanks, Leslie. Love you too, baby.
Although, the thing that makes me not think it's true is the fact that Michael Horn still harasses me and says to me, thank you for promoting the Billy Meyer stuff. So that,
right.
You can do the opposite of that, and that's what he's really thinking, which is please shut up and stop talking about it.
Right.
So, okay. But anyway, so I watched this film with you, and I think we've talked about this on the air, right? It slowly but surely degrades into Billy Meyer is a prophet who has alerted the world to the fact and mailed various politicians or the UN or something petitioning to do away with all religions. And he's got the real truth about Christ and about all of that. He's got this giant gun collection. It turns into a Q&A of sorts of, well, gee, what does Billy Meyer think about abortion? What does Billy Meyer think about marriage? All of these things that are like what a cult leader would be asking. It's very much a cult indoctrination video, and yet Al Lemberg writes a 2-part glowing review for UFO Magazine. Now, it's not glowing in a way that is completely accepting of everything that he's seeing and hearing, but it's glowing in the sense of, well, this is eminently watchable, and so you guys should watch it and make up your own minds. Which I guess would be fair if it didn't slip into this cult indoctrination bullshit.
Yeah.
And to me, again, that's another thing that's so obviously there that it really disappoints me in you, Al.
Yeah.
Or Alfred. I guess I don't know if Al is an insult to you or if you actually call yourself Al.
I mean, he seems like a very an intelligent man, and I don't get why he would even pay attention to that at all. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But interestingly enough, excuse me, the whole back to the whole blog thing and your responses to that, I have to say it sounds oddly familiar to me to things that Jim Deerdorf had said. And Jim Deerdorf is, of course, one of the big proponents of the Meyer case. He just pumps it all over the net, and he's also the Talmud Emmanuel. He's a
Right,
big authority on that, saying how real it is and how we have to listen to this. And he's always got a quick rebuttal for every legitimate photo analysis done of Meyer's stuff when any can be gleaned from it. Of course, the guy's not even remotely familiar with imaging at all, but yet will argue with me and Vaeni about it, which, again, makes no goddamn sense whatsoever. That whole attitude that you're getting in that thread sounds very much like his outlook on this, which is what he calls the plausible deniability factor. And in that theory, let me just give you the quick version of that, is that, let's say, for instance, we've got a piece of Billy Bob footage, and it's a disc flying around a tree. If you're making any analogies, they're your own. And it looks like a model hanging from a string because it's on a pendulum. It's wobbling back and forth on a central axis. It's spinning. It's just moving like that back and around this tree. Well, anybody with a fifth grade education would say it's a model on a string and it's wobbling back and forth on the string. So what? His answer is that the extraterrestrials, in order to give skeptics a way out, fly their ship as if it's tethered to a pendulum. That's right. You didn't misunderstand me. They're making their ships look like fakes. So, my answer to him was, well, then that means that every goddamn fake that we've uncovered over the years, to your analogy, or to your theory, rather, is potentially real. Well, now, we're in some real pretty shit then. Because what the hell are we looking at? It's a ridiculous notion to me. It's ridiculous. It's just another lame-ass excuse to believe a case that should have been put to bed decades ago and no one should have given a second glance to. But because of people like him, that's exactly the same analogy. It's like everything is attributable to this field in the high strangeness. The high strangeness means they can influence people to make hoaxes, and they can influence people to do this, and Jim Tickendorf says that, they fly their ships like they're tethered to strings. So how are we to tell? It's all a big mystery.
So, Leslie, my question now that I think about this is, did you write to Alfred Lemberg when he wrote that 2-part review asking him why he's still talking about the Meyer case when if he just doesn't write the review, it'll just go away? No, because he wrote something positive about it that conforms to the view that all of this is magical and mystical. Not big mean old Jeremy, who is calling a spade a spade.
Yeah.
But nothing is a spade because it's all an illusion. Oh, go fuck yourself.
Well,
that's when I punch him in the face.
You know what?
Not Alfred. Mike.
We said this, 2 years ago? When you and Dave and I were sitting around talking about how do we change the conversation to be a little bit more investigative and a little bit more critical and start identifying crap and calling it just that? We said, we're going to get a load of crap for this. We're going to get a load of flack for this. And
who's going to police the field? You?
And police the field.
Who cares? Police the field, or we just want common fucking sense. That's all I'm asking for.
I'm not even saying we're policing the field in that sense. I'm saying, how about we just inspire everybody, or try to inspire everybody, to a little bit of critical thought? That's all it really matters. That's all that really gets down to. Stop being a sheep. Start thinking. Stop wishing for an answer. And you'll find amazing things that really baffle you, and then you can tell people about it. But again, this is all about drama.
They don't think they're being sheep. They think we're being sheep by saying that. See how the whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you routine goes?
Right. Well, you can't let that aggravate you because that's just childish personality issues. And I try to stay out of personality issues these days with this because I'm getting older and I'm tired of dealing with it.
Well, maybe I've got my own disorder, because really, if all of this is 5-year-old bullshit, that any 5-year-old should know, then why should I care? Why should I give a shit what these people think, except that they have a voice that people listen to by proxy of the magazine and or the blog, with which I am associated, for whatever that's worth, and
but you have to care about you have to care about the integrity of what you're writing, and you have to care about the integrity of the magazine.
I have to care about where my voice goes, but I also, more than that, honestly, that's not the issue. The issue is, like I said before, personally, I like these guys and gals.
Yeah.
And I think that they are smart and know better. And the fact that they're arguing the point to argue the point, I think that's what's going on. And I guess maybe it's my own adolescence coming to the fore, but that just fucking gets me. It just gets me every time.
No, you're feeling the passion of what it is to be in this field actively and questioning people and devoting time and energy to it. That's what it is. And after a while, you won't care anymore. You'll just ignore that. It won't matter, or we'll just cease becoming active on other boards,
Well, I think that's it. I think I cannot look at any of those blogs or talk on any of those boards anymore because it angers me. And unless I like being angered, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just used to being in that state of hostile anger all the time, so I look for things that are going to anger me, and maybe it's my own issue at that point. So I'm going to make my New Year's resolution a little bit late in the year and stop. I'm just going to put on blinders, focus on this show, focus on my own writing, and not listen to this.
Well, you can focus on the blog. It's okay to write on the blog and do that. It's just as far as comments go, don't bother with the fighting. Just let it go. I feel confident in saying that I have great faith in public people, the public in general. And I think that when people read what you wrote, that they're going to be, seeing your side of this. And I think they're going to be a little surprised at what the others are saying. So that's what you have to, you have to sleep at night saying, I said what I thought was right. I'm doing and saying what I think is best and correct and is obviously correct. You got to be satisfied with that. You can't get yourself all worked. Believe me, ATS, I used to do it all the time. I was amazed one day when I went on and had a legitimate conversation for 4 pages in a thread, and no one called me a name or said I was insane. Just because I talk about the state of human perception and reality and all of these things kind of figuring into maybe part of this mystery. I was like, came home and I told Lisa, I said, Christ, I typed 4 pages into a blog today on ATS, and I actually had a nice conversation. After a while, those become far and few between, and you're like, wow, that was really great, because the majority of them will be fights and infighting and childish name calling and all of that. We've done our fair share of childish name calling tonight, but it's just in the heat of aggravation and frustration with this stuff, and it is easy.
Michael Horn is a vindictive piece of shit.
Well, I agree.
I think that's actually factually a good description of him.
I don't disagree.
I stand by that.
I don't disagree. But I think I think people have to recognize that it's not about trying to be right, and it's kind of like you're shaking someone who's just in a daze, and we've been shaking people for a couple of years now, and some people are getting it, which is great. But some are just holding on to that old, weird excuse. I don't believe this field needs apologists. I don't think it's necessary. The good stuff will take all the abuse you can throw at it. So that's what we got to keep fighting for, is that kind of stuff.
maybe it's all just that in the end.
Yeah.
Bunch of babies in a nursery whang at each other.
Maybe.
Controlled by aliens.
Maybe.
Oh wait, no,
maybe you are.
I really would like an explanation of if you believe that aliens have the ability and are influencing everybody in that way. Why say another word? What other word could you have to say on the topic if you truly believe that?
That is the end-all excuse, right? Right. There's no way around that.
I guess you could then quote physics to try to back it up, you know.
Well, again, it's the same thing as
ancient texts.
Yeah, it's the same thing as Deardorff's plausible deniability idea. How do you go around that? Well, that means that every piece of evidence out there could be faked because the aliens want it to look fake. It's just absurd, you know. And if you're going to use that excuse, that is the end all excuse. There's no way around that. Oh, if that's what you think, then okay.
And there's a lot of jumping to other conclusions too, like with the contactees. It's like, well, the CIA and politicians, they seem to be interested in them, and the military was interested in them. Doesn't that mean something? Well, yeah, it means that the Cold War was going on, and here are these people saying this stuff at a time when, like, what, McCarthyism was big? I mean, you know, everyone had a file. And now here are people saying, you know, they're ambassadors to aliens. You know, think of all of the implications of that at the time. Plus, we already know from Greg Bishop's work that, you know, at least in the 80s, a lot of these outlandish Area 51 type stories came about to flesh out spies, to see who would bite and see who would actually care about our top secret technology like that. So there's all kinds of mundane reasons. Yeah, and to cover up the projects and all that stuff. So there's all kinds of mundane reasons for them to have FBI files on them and things like that.
Well, one needs to go listen to Radio Mysterioso with Greg Bishop and listen to, what was that man's name, Jeremy? Do you remember?
No, but you do.
I do?
Yeah, you remembered it the other day.
Yeah.
In fact, I think you wrote it on the UFO blog.
Well, I don't have the link to that anymore. We're on the air. We're broadcasting, morons.
My God. Well, okay. Had a guy on.
But there's a guy on there. If you look on Greg's front page of his podcast, you'll see, I think it's the second or third guest down, is a man who spent time with Adamski. And in that show, he says that Adamski told him, quote, or not, I don't want to quote because I won't say it exactly.
Yeah, you don't even know the guy's name.
But, right, it's late, give me a break. He says in there that Adamski flatly told him, if Prohibition hadn't have gone down the tubes, I never would have had to get involved in this flying saucer crap. There's your mundane answer. He needed the money. His liquor running days were over, so he had to find something else. There it is. Ray Stanford, thank you. So look for that show and listen to it, because Greg, that's a great guest, Greg, and that was a hell of a show. So everybody go listen to that, and you'll learn a lot from that man's stories of meeting all sorts of different contactee folks over the years.
Yeah. And we're going to have Greg Bishop on this here show.
We do.
He's an interesting cat, and he wants to come on. So
I'd very much
we'll
like
have him
that.
on in the near future. Next week, however, we have a very special guest.
Yes.
Very special.
Yes. Yes.
Do we tell people who it is, or do we make them suffer?
It's Dr. Dennis McKenna.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, 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 dun. So, and Dennis will be talking with us about psilocybin mushrooms and DMT experiences and ayahuasca and his journeys with his brother Terrence into the Amazon to partake of all this stuff and what happened and
what he thinks now about certain theories that they held back then.
Yes.
Certain things that Terrence came up with.
Yeah.
That's what I will find interesting, or perhaps already have because we've already recorded the show.
Yes. And I think everybody's going to really enjoy it because Dennis has agreed to do more shows with us about this because it is such an expansive topic, and the connections to the whole alien experience in UFOs is pretty compelling, methinks. So,
and why also? Because he loves us.
He said he had a great time, and that's gratifying to know that we can have somebody of his caliber on the show and he actually enjoys himself.
I'm gratifying myself right now just thinking about it.
Oh, I gotta go.
And that's where we should end it.